The massive screens in the Galactic Council chamber display the approaching vessel. It was tiny, almost laughably so by galactic standards. The assembled representatives of the 1,000 spacefaring races murmured among themselves, their reactions ranging from amusement to outright dismissal. "This can't be right," Battlemaster Smith growled, his scaled armor clicking as he leaned forward. His species had joined the Council centuries ago, and he'd never seen anything quite so primitive. "Are we certain this is their flagship?" The Council's head analyzer, Master Green, nodded his elongated head. "Indeed, this is the HSS Determination, carrying Admiral James Ross of the Human Space Force. Their entire fleet follows similar design principles." The human ship was barely the size of a standard Council cargo shuttle. Its sleek, angular design stood in stark contrast to the enormous, city-sized vessels that typically docked at the Council station. The Determination's polished hull reflected the light of the nearby star, making it look more like a pleasure craft than a military vessel. "Let them dock," ordered High Counselor White, her luminescent tentacles waving with mild irritation. "Let's get this over with." The human ship's approach was precise, unnaturally so. It maneuvered through the massive docking bay with a grace that caught even Battlemaster Smith's attention, though he'd never admit it. The vessel seemed to dance between the larger ships, its movements fluid and controlled. Admiral Ross stepped out of his ship wearing a simple blue uniform. He was shorter than most of the Council species, but his posture radiated confidence. Behind him, 2 other humans followed, carrying data tablets and wearing similar uniforms. "Honorable Council," Ross began, his voice clear and steady. "On behalf of Earth and the Human Space Force, I bring greetings and a request to join the Galactic Trade Alliance." Battlemaster Smith couldn't contain himself. He burst out laughing, a sound that echoed through the chamber. Other representatives joined in, their various forms of amusement creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and rumbles. "You wish to join the Trade Alliance?" Smith moved closer, towering over Ross. "With ships that look like escape pods. The Alliance requires members to contribute to mutual defense. What could your tiny fleet possibly offer?" Ross remained calm, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Size isn't everything, Battlemaster. Our ships are the product of centuries of innovation and efficiency." "Innovation?" Master Green interjected, his analytical mind already dismissing the human vessels. "Our scans show no significant energy outputs, no massive weapon systems, no city-sized crew quarters. How do you even maintain a proper command structure in such confined spaces?" Ross tried to explain about neural interfaces, advanced AI integration, and revolutionary propulsion systems, but the Council had already made up their minds. Their own massive ships were symbols of power and progress, each one a testament to their species' advancement. High Counselor White raised her tentacles for silence. "Admiral Ross, while we appreciate your species' ambition, the Council cannot accept Earth into the Alliance at this time. Your fleet simply doesn't meet our standard requirements for military contribution. I urge you to reconsider," Ross said, his voice taking on an edge of concern. "Our intelligence suggests increasing pirate activity in the outer sectors." "The dreaded Armada." "The dreaded Armada is a myth," Battlemaster Smith interrupted. "A story to frighten young ones. If such a threat existed, our mighty fleets would have crushed them long ago." Ross looked around the chamber, noting the dismissive expressions and barely concealed amusement. He straightened his uniform and nodded once. "Then we'll take our leave. But remember this moment, honored Council. Appearances can be deceiving." As the humans returned to their ship, Battlemaster Smith turned to High Counselor White. "Can you imagine? They thought they could defend trade routes with those tiny vessels. They'd be better off staying in their own system." The Determination departed with the same precision it had arrived with, its small form quickly disappearing among the massive ships crowding the station's space. None of the Council members noticed the subtle modifications along the human ship's hull, nor did they detect the advanced systems running silently beneath its surface. They were too busy laughing at the tiny fleet to see what was right in front of them. They would remember their laughter later, when everything changed. 3 months after the Council's rejection, Admiral Ross stood at the observation deck of Earth's orbital station. Below him, teams of engineers swarmed over dozens of ships, each one identical to the Determination in size, but different in purpose. "Admiral," the voice called from behind him, "the latest intelligence reports have arrived." Ross turned to face Captain Miller, his most trusted intelligence officer. The captain's usually calm face showed signs of worry. "Show me." Miller handed over a data tablet. On it, images showed massive ships moving through the darkness of space. But these weren't the elegant vessels of the Council. These were darker, more threatening. Their hulls bore the scars of countless battles, and their weapons bristled from every surface. "The dreaded Armada," Ross muttered. "They're not staying in the outer rim anymore." "No, sir. They're getting bolder." Miller pointed to a series of coordinates. "They've hit 3 trading posts in the last week. The Council's response has been slow." Ross couldn't help but smile grimly. "Of course it has. Those massive ships of theirs take hours just to change direction. They're probably still filling out the paperwork to launch a response fleet." Through the window, a new ship caught his attention. It was moving into position alongside its sisters, its hull gleaming with fresh paint. The name Swift Justice stood out in bold letters against its side. "How are the modifications coming along?" Ross asked. "Better than expected, sir. The new neural interfaces are working perfectly. One pilot can now control their ship as easily as moving their own body." Miller's eyes lit up with pride. "And the AI integration? It's revolutionary. Each ship thinks and reacts faster than any crew of thousands." Ross nodded, remembering the Council's mockery of their tiny vessels. They hadn't bothered to ask why humans built small ships. They hadn't wondered about the lack of crew quarters or the seemingly empty spaces in their designs. They had simply assumed that humanity was primitive. A flash of light drew their attention. On the testing range, one of the new ships was demonstrating its capabilities. It moved like a living thing, spinning and weaving through a field of debris at speeds that would tear apart a larger vessel. Its point defense systems activated, invisible beams striking targets too small for the naked eye to see. "Send another warning to the Council," Ross ordered. "Tell them again about the Armada. Include the latest intelligence." Miller looked uncertain. "Sir, they've ignored our last 3 warnings. Battlemaster Smith even sent back a message suggesting we leave military matters to real warriors." Ross's jaw tightened. "Send it anyway. When this storm breaks, I want the record to show we tried to warn them." Across the station, alarms began to sound. Another intelligence report was coming in. The dreaded Armada had struck again, this time hitting closer to the Council's core worlds. The pirates were growing more confident with each successful raid. "Begin final preparations," Ross commanded. "I want every ship ready for combat within the week. If the Council won't listen, we'll have to be ready to act on our own." Miller saluted and left, leaving Ross alone with his thoughts. On the data tablet, images continued to stream in. The Armada's ships were enormous, dwarfing even the Council's vessels. Their weapons could devastate planets, and their armor had withstood centuries of combat. But they had never faced anything like humanity's fleet. In the shipyards below, engineers made final adjustments to systems the Council had never imagined. Each tiny ship contained more computing power than entire alien fleets. Each one could move in ways that defied the expectations of races that thought bigger always meant better. "They'll understand soon enough," Ross whispered to himself, watching another ship complete its testing run. Size isn't everything in space. Sometimes the smallest predator is the most dangerous. Behind him, Earth's defense fleet continued to grow, each ship a testament to human innovation. The storm was coming, and humanity would be ready, whether the Council believed in the threat or not. The first attack came at dawn, ship time. The Council's trading hub at Station Beta never stood a chance. The dreaded Armada's massive ships appeared from hyperspace like dark mountains, their weapon systems already charging. The station's defenders, 3 of the Council's mighty warships, began their ponderous turn to face the threat. They were still turning when the first shots hit. Status report. Battlemaster Smith barked from his command throne aboard the Council's flagship. The massive bridge around him erupted in chaos as hundreds of crew members rushed to their stations. "Multiple stations under attack, sir," his second-in-command reported. "The dreaded Armada. They're real, and they're hitting everywhere at once." On the main display, red dots appeared across the sector map. 6 trading stations, 4 colony worlds, 3 major shipping lanes, all under attack simultaneously. "Impossible," Smith growled, but the evidence was right in front of him. The pirates' ships were enormous, their black hulls decorated with the scars of 1,000 victories. Each one was nearly as large as a Council warship, bristling with weapons that spoke of centuries of stolen technology. A new alert blared. "Station Gamma has fallen. Station Delta reports critical damage. The Armada's ships, they're too fast." Smith slammed his armored fist into his command throne. His own ship, longer than some cities, finally completed its turn to face the nearest pirate vessel. "Return fire. Show these criminals the might of the Council fleet." But the might of the Council fleet proved less impressive than expected. Their massive ships, designed to intimidate through sheer size, were too slow to track their targets. The pirates' vessels, despite their enormous bulk, displayed a shocking agility. "How?" Smith demanded as another blast rocked his flagship. "How are they moving those huge ships so quickly?" "Unknown, sir. Our targeting systems can't keep up with their maneuvers." Across the sector, the story was the same. The Council's defensive fleet found itself outmaneuvered at every turn. Ships that had been designed to inspire awe through their size became nothing more than massive targets. High Counselor White's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions. Protect the core worlds at all costs." But falling back proved as difficult as advancing. The Council ships' massive engines needed time to power up, time to change direction, time they didn't have. The pirates struck with surgical precision, targeting engines and weapon systems with devastating effect. "Send out a distress call," Smith ordered, his pride finally giving way to desperation. "To everyone. Anyone who can help." The call went out across all frequencies, reaching every corner of known space. The mighty Galactic Council, with its fleet of city-sized warships, was begging for aid. In a forgotten corner of the sector, aboard the human ship Determination, Admiral Ross received the call. He looked at his command crew, seeing in their eyes the same grim determination he felt. "Sir," Captain Miller said quietly, "the Council rejected us, said we were too small to help." Ross nodded. "They did. But right now, thousands of innocent lives are at risk." He straightened in his chair, his decision made. "Send word to the fleet. Operation Swift Justice begins now." As the Council's mighty ships burned and their stations fell, humanity's tiny fleet powered up their advanced engines. Each ship hummed with technology that the Council had been too proud to even consider, crewed by humans linked directly to their vessels through neural interfaces. "All ships, prepare for combat jump," Ross commanded. "Let's show the galaxy what humanity's fleet can really do." The pirate fleet continued their rampage, confident in their victory over the Council's renowned warships. They never noticed the small, fast-moving signatures approaching from the edge of their sensors. They were about to learn why size wasn't everything in space combat, and why you should never underestimate the creativity of humanity. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 50 ships, each one barely larger than a Council escape pod, appeared between the burning stations and the dreaded Armada's massive vessels. On the bridge of his flagship, the pirate commander laughed. More tiny ships. The Council must be truly desperate to call in these insects. His laughter died as he watched the human ships move. The determination led the charge, its hull gleaming as it accelerated to speeds that seemed impossible. Behind it, the swift Justice and its sister ships spread out in an attack pattern that looked more like a dance than a military formation. "Sir," Admiral Ross's tactical officer reported, her mind linked directly to her station through her neural interface. "All ships report combat ready. Combat systems are online." Ross smiled. "Begin Operation Swift Justice. Show them what these tiny ships can do." The human fleet moved as one. Each ship, controlled by a single pilot mentally linked to both their vessel and its AI, performed maneuvers that would have torn larger ships apart. They wove between the pirate vessel's massive energy beams, too small and fast to track. On the Council's flagship, Battlemaster Smith watched in stunned silence. "Impossible," he whispered. "Nothing can move like that." The human ships struck like arrows, their advanced weapons targeting specific points on the pirates' hulls. Where the Council's massive ships had failed to penetrate the pirates' shields, humanity's precision strikes slipped through gaps in their defenses. Multiple hostile ships reporting damage. The report rang out across the human fleet's secure channel. "Their shield generators can't track our smaller signatures." Ross watched as his fleet executed their carefully planned attack. Years of development, of choosing efficiency over size, of perfecting neural interfaces and AI systems, all led to this moment. The human ships moved in ways that defied the pirates' targeting systems, their size now a decisive advantage. "They're splitting up," Captain Miller reported. "The pirate fleet is breaking formation." Indeed, the massive pirate ships were trying to separate, to give themselves room to maneuver. But their huge engines took time to respond, time the human fleet didn't give them. 3 human ships surrounded one pirate vessel, moving in perfect coordination. Their weapons struck simultaneously, overwhelming the shield generators at a single point. The massive ship's defenses collapsed, leaving it vulnerable. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta," Ross commanded. His neural interface transmitted his tactical plans instantly to the entire fleet. 50 human ships moved as one mind, striking from all directions. The pirates fought back furiously. Their massive weapons could destroy any ship they hit, but they couldn't hit what they couldn't target. The human vessels were too small, too fast, too agile. Every shot that missed exposed the pirates to another precision strike. From his command throne, Battlemaster Smith watched in amazement as the tiny human fleet systematically took apart ships that had overwhelmed his own mighty vessels. "Now I understand," he muttered. "Their ships aren't small because they're primitive. They're small because that's what works." The battle continued to unfold like a complex ballet. Human ships darted between the lumbering pirate vessels, striking vital systems with surgical precision. Their neural interfaces allowed them to react faster than any traditional crew, while their AIs calculated attack vectors that larger ships could never attempt. "Status report," Ross called out, though his neural link had already shown him the answer. 3 pirate capital ships disabled. His tactical officer responded. 2 more showing critical damage. "No casualties on our side. Their weapons are too slow to track us effectively." The pirates' confidence had turned to confusion, then to fear. Their mighty fleet, which had laughed at the approach of the tiny human ships, now found themselves being systematically dismantled by an enemy they couldn't effectively fight back against. Ross allowed himself a small smile. "Continue the attack. Show the galaxy why humanity chose to build our ships this way." The battle wasn't over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Size, it seemed, wasn't everything in space warfare. Sometimes, being the smallest ship in the fight was exactly what you wanted to be. Full power to forward shields. The pirate flagship's commander slammed his fist on his control panel. His massive vessel, nearly 3 kilometers long, shuddered as 5 human ships struck it simultaneously from different angles. The humans had turned space combat into an art form. Their ships moved like schools of fish, each motion precise and purposeful. Where the pirates tried to fill space with energy beams and massive projectiles, the human vessels slipped through the gaps in their defense with almost insulting ease. Admiral Ross watched the battle unfold through both his neural interface and the Determination's view screens. Status on the pirate flagship. Their shield grid is failing, Captain Miller reported. Our targeting AIs have identified 17 critical weak points. Their defense patterns are becoming predictable. The space around them lit up with desperate fire from the pirate vessels. Their massive weapons could have vaporized a human ship with a single hit if they could land one. But the human fleet's response times were measured in microseconds, not the minutes needed for the huge ships to adjust their aim. Look at that. A council observer transmitted across all frequencies. On their screens, everyone watched as 3 human ships performed what looked like an impossible maneuver. They spiraled around each other, using their combined momentum to curve around a pirate's energy beam before striking the vessel's engine housing. The massive pirate ship's engines flickered and died. It began to drift, its bulk now nothing more than a liability. "This is how you fight in space," Ross explained over an open channel to the watching council ships. "Speed, precision, efficiency, not brute force." The Determination dove through a gap in a pirate vessel's shield coverage, a gap so small that larger ships wouldn't even have seen it. Its weapons struck with surgical precision, shorting out shield generators and weapon systems. "Admiral," Miller's voice carried a note of triumph. "The pirate fleet is attempting to retreat. Their formation is breaking." Indeed, the massive ships were trying to turn away, to flee from enemies they couldn't hit, but their very size worked against them. Each turn took precious minutes. Each course adjustment was slow and predictable. The human fleet showed no such limitations. Their neural interfaces allowed pilots to move their ships as naturally as their own bodies. The AIs calculated vectors that would have been impossible for organic minds alone. Each human ship could change direction instantly, their small size and advanced technology letting them ignore the limitations that bound larger vessels. "Target their engines," Ross commanded. "Don't let them escape to threaten other worlds." His fleet responded as one. 50 ships moved in perfect coordination, their attack patterns shifting faster than organic minds could follow. Where the pirates tried to predict their movements, the humans were already somewhere else. On his command throne aboard the Council flagship, Battlemaster Smith watched in awe. "All this time," he muttered, "we thought bigger meant better. We were so wrong." The battle reached its peak as the human ships executed what they called the sword dance. 20 ships moved in interlocking patterns, their paths forming a complex web that trapped a pirate vessel. Each human ship struck at a different angle, their combined attacks overwhelming the massive vessel's defenses. "This is impossible," the pirate commander's desperate transmission echoed across space. "How can such tiny ships be so powerful?" "Size isn't everything," Ross replied calmly. "You're not being defeated by our ship's size. You're being defeated by human ingenuity." The battle was becoming a rout. The pirates' mighty fleet, which had so recently terrorized the Council, found itself being systematically dismantled by ships they could barely see. Their massive weapons were useless against targets too small and fast to hit. Their thick armor meant nothing against precision strikes at weak points. As the pirate fleet crumbled, Ross allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had proven itself not through overwhelming force, but through smart design and superior tactics. The galaxy was learning an important lesson. In space combat, bigger isn't always better. "All ships, focus fire on the flagship." Admiral Ross's command transmitted instantly through the neural network connecting the human fleet. The Determination led the charge, diving beneath a massive energy beam that moved so slowly it seemed almost frozen in space. The pirate flagship was the largest ship in their fleet, a monster of steel and energy that could have housed a small city. Its weapons could crack planets. Its shields had withstood centuries of combat. But it had never faced anything like humanity's fleet. "You cannot defeat us." The pirate commander's voice boomed across all frequencies. "We have ruled space for 1,000 years. We will not be beaten by insects. Ross smiled as his ships proved the pirate commander wrong. The human fleet moved like a swarm of deadly hornets, each strike precisely calculated by their AIs to hit at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right spot. Multiple shield generators offline. Captain Miller reported, his neural interface streaming data directly to his mind. They're trying to rotate their damage to protected sectors, but they can't turn fast enough. The space around the pirate flagship became a light show as their gunners fired desperately at the human ships. But the massive weapon systems, designed to battle equally huge vessels, couldn't track their tiny targets. Every shot that missed left the pirates vulnerable to another precision strike. "Watch this," Ross transmitted to the observing council ships. "This is why we build small." The Swift Justice and 5 other human vessels executed a perfect spiral maneuver, weaving between the flagship's defense fire like threads through a needle. Their combined attack struck a single point in the pirates' shield grid, overloading it in a cascade of energy. Impossible. The pirate commander's voice had lost its confidence. "Our shields are rated to stop capital ship weapons." "That's the problem," Ross replied calmly. "You built defenses against big attacks. You never considered what several small, precise hits could do." The human fleet demonstrated their point by targeting the flagship's weapon systems. No single hit was powerful enough to destroy the massive guns, but the combined effect of dozens of small, precise strikes added up quickly. One by one, the pirate flagship's main weapons went dark. Their point defense systems, designed to stop missiles and fighters, proved useless against ships that could think and move faster than any organic pilot. "Admiral," Miller called out, "the other pirate ships are breaking formation." They're running. Indeed, the remaining pirate vessels were turning away, their massive engines straining to build up speed. But their very size worked against them again. The energy needed to move such huge ships meant they took precious minutes to accelerate. The human fleet gave them no such time. "Execute Operation Endgame," Ross commanded. His fleet split into perfect squadrons, each group targeting a different fleeing vessel. Their small size and advanced engines let them accelerate in seconds, catching up to the lumbering pirate ships with ease. On the Council flagship, Battlemaster Smith watched in amazement as the human vessels systematically disabled the retreating pirates. "All this time," he said to himself, "we thought they were primitive because their ships were small. We never thought to ask why they built them that way." The pirate flagship made one last attempt to fight back, firing all its remaining weapons in a desperate barrage. The human ships flowed around the attack like water around rocks, their neural interfaces and AIs calculating safe paths faster than any organic brain could process. "This is the end," Ross transmitted to the pirate commander. "You can power down your systems and surrender, or we can disable your ship piece by piece. Your choice." For a moment, silence filled the comm channels. Then, slowly, the massive flagship's remaining weapons powered down. We surrender." The pirate commander's voice was barely a whisper. "How? How did such tiny ships defeat us?" Ross looked out at his fleet, each ship a testament to human innovation and efficiency. "Because sometimes," he replied, "the smallest predator is the most dangerous one." The battle was over. The dreaded Armada, which had terrorized the galaxy with their massive ships, had been defeated by vessels they had dismissed as insignificant. Size, it seemed, wasn't everything in space warfare. Innovation, efficiency, and adaptability had proven far more important than brute force and intimidation. 1 week after the battle, Admiral Ross stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. This time, there was no laughter, no mockery. The assembled representatives watched him with newfound respect and more than a little embarrassment. High Counselor White's tentacles moved gracefully as she spoke. "Admiral Ross, we owe humanity a great debt, and we owe you an apology." Through the chamber's massive windows, Ross could see the remains of the pirate fleet being towed away by small human vessels. The once mighty ships looked less impressive now, their hulls scarred by precision strikes from weapons they had never been able to counter. The Council formally requests that humanity share their ship design principles, Battlemaster Smith announced, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine admiration. We were wrong to judge your fleet by its size. Ross nodded, remembering their previous meeting in this very chamber. Size isn't everything, Battlemaster. Humanity learned that lesson centuries ago. On the main display, footage from the battle played. Human ships danced between energy beams, their neural interfaces and AI systems, allowing them to perform maneuvers that larger vessels could never attempt. Each strike had been precise, efficient, carefully calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum force. Tell us, Master Green leaned forward, his analytical mind clearly fascinated. Why did humanity choose to build such small ships when every other race chose to go bigger? Ross smiled. Because we asked different questions. Everyone else asked, how do we build the most powerful ships? We asked, how do we build the most effective ones? The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. On smaller screens around the room, engineers from a dozen species were already studying the battle footage, analyzing the human ship's movements and capabilities. The Galactic Trade Alliance would be honored if Earth would accept membership, High Counselor White announced. Your fleet has proven itself more than capable of contributing to our mutual defense. We accept, Ross replied. But on one condition. He paused, making sure he had everyone's attention. The Alliance needs to change its thinking. Vigor isn't always better. Innovation and efficiency matter more than size and power. Smith stood up, his armor gleaming. I second this motion. The battle against the dreaded Armada taught us all a valuable lesson, one that we must not forget. The council chamber erupted in agreement, representatives from 1,000 worlds, each having witnessed the battle through transmitted footage, voted unanimously to accept Earth into the Alliance. As the formal ceremony concluded, Ross walked to the observation deck. The determination floated outside, its small size now a point of pride rather than mockery. Next to it, massive council ships were already being modified, their crews learning the lessons that humanity had mastered long ago. Admiral, Captain Miller approached, holding a data tablet. The first joint training exercises are scheduled to begin next week. The council races are eager to learn our combat techniques. Ross nodded, watching as a group of alien engineers studied a human ship with obvious fascination. Teach them well, Captain. Show them why we build our ships this way. Show them that true strength comes from innovation, not intimidation. In the space around the station, human ships continued their patrol, their presence now bringing comfort rather than ridicule. They had proved that the smallest fleet in the galaxy could also be the most effective one. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never judge by appearances. The humans' tiny fleet had changed space combat forever, proving that sometimes the smallest ships could make the biggest difference. As Ross prepared to return to his ship, he took one last look at the council chamber. The representatives were still discussing the battle, still analyzing how such small ships had achieved such a massive victory. Remember this day, he said quietly. Remember that humanity didn't become strong by building bigger ships. We became strong by building smarter ones. The era of massive warships was ending. A new age of efficient, advanced vessels was beginning. And humanity, once mocked for their tiny fleet, would lead the way into this new future.